Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Kind of an interesting story that not only gives me an excuse to use Judge Dredd in a thumbnail, which I personally appreciate. The 2012 Judge Dredd, by the way, is a fun film. You should check it out if you do like your action movies. But it also gives me a chance to kind of go open up Paul Lesko's Twitter, because Paul Lesko has a lot of very interesting takes on different hobby lawsuits, and this is an interesting one. Not necessarily because it'll go anywhere, but it does open up a couple of interesting questions. Now, I do also want to give credit, so I've got Paul Lesko's Twitter up in front of me, and I'll include a link to this thread in the description so that you can check it out for yourself. There's some good information here and some close-ups in some of the lawsuit if you're interested, but at the same time this was brought to my attention originally from the Wax Museum podcast, so I saw that on their social media. And by the way, I'll also link to this video because this video actually contains some very interesting points that also go to some of the background of alt, which if you're not too familiar with them, they're one of those platforms that does auctions, but in addition they also do the fractional, and they've got a lot of shadiness in kind of their past as well, some of which is outlined very nicely in this video. So I do recommend checking out the video even if you're not too interested in looking over the lawsuit portion of it. It does give a little background on alt for those who are less familiar or don't remember because it's been a little while. But focusing on the lawsuit itself here, Paul Lesko does a very good job summarizing it, but I'll go over a couple of key pieces. Really what it comes down to is alt taking on Beckett Collectibles because of an alleged altered and graded Steph Curry rookie card. So the rookie card in question is this one here. Now, 2009-10 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor Steph Curry in a 9.5 with all 9.5 subgrades. Now, really the key here appears to be that alt purchased the card for $168,000, and part of their lawsuit is they say they only did so because BGS graded the card and gave it a 9.5, of course, the condition. But as he goes forward in reviewing the lawsuit, while they purchased it, then they looked at by August 2022, where the card was allegedly now worth $350,000 because you're using a later comp. So they purchased it at one level, but at a certain point, obviously, as the market ballooned, the prices went up. So they're using a higher price comp as part of, their determining what kind of damages they should be getting. Where the real issue comes into play is that at some point later on, and it's included all in the lawsuit, and like I said, you can zoom in on the different pieces just like this. So it gives you some information on the dates and times. But specifically, then they enlisted PSA to grade the card. So because PSA obviously would get your max value, you're looking to potentially increase the value of it. But PSA determined that the card was altered because it was noticeably short and trimmed from top to bottom. But then BGS, now this is the part that's kind of interesting for me in a couple of levels. Then BGS got a chance to look at it and review it, and they confirmed and acknowledged that the card was deemed altered by our graders. BGS further indicated the card measures short and the top edge is inconsistent with the others graded by BGS. So BGS kind of opened themselves up for this as kind of a follow-up. Now, as is stated correctly in the Wax Museum video, given Alt's track record, this piece right here becomes very pertinent because they say on or around August 30th, 2022, Alt removed the Steph Curry rookie card from the BGS slab and securely transported to be evaluated by PSA, aka they removed it from what was BGS's certification of the authenticity and of the unaltered and all that. So BGS and PSA can both agree that it's been altered now, but now you have a chain of custody issue because as soon as you take it out of there, you've basically removed any evidence that nothing has happened between the time it was originally encapsulated and the time the PSA got a chance to look at it. So PSA could be looking at a card that was 100% trimmed, but BGS could very easily say, we don't know what happened between the time you took it out of the slab and the time you gave it to PSA. And they would be well within their rights to come back at you with that. That's why I say it's going to be kind of interesting. I don't think this is necessarily going to go anywhere. And I don't think Beckett necessarily has to be too overly concerned about it. But it is a legitimate question they can bring up as terms of, let's say they had gone the other way and Beckett had said, no, we stand by original assessment. We disagree with PSA. And then both sides are just kind of pointing at each other. And Alt at the same time might be kind of trying to pull a little bit of a fast one. I'm not suggesting that's what they're doing here, but I'm saying they left the door open the same way that Beckett left the door open by acknowledging that they agree that it's short. So the question becomes, did Beckett get it wrong in the first place? Did PSA get it wrong? But if PSA got it wrong, then Beckett got it wrong the second time. So that's a little bit murky there. But at the same time, let's assume that it was the case. Then Beckett basically admitted that they screwed up the first time, which in some sense is commendable, but obviously then leaves Alt to kind of question them on it. Or the other way, Beckett can point out, yep, we agree that this is short. We agree that this looks trimmed, but we don't know how it got in that state, and we stand by our original assessment of the card before you took it out of the holder. And that's one of those things that you kind of have to throw in there because it's any lawyer worth their salt is going to bring up this little section of it here as part of the question. And it's at that state basically where we're left with, because it says here, Alt therefore sued BGS for negligent misrepresentation of the card. And what it really comes down to is how much accountability does a third-party grader have for something like this? PSA does have a guarantee in place for certain elements of it to cover a lot of this. Beckett doesn't necessarily have that. SGC doesn't have that. But compared to that, CSG does have a written guarantee that is similar to PSA's. So it's a bit of a mixed bag depending on which third-party grader you have. And again, depending on how insurance goes and what the claiming process is, you may have different experiences in terms of actually trying to get your money back. but at least two of them do have some kind of a guarantee written in. Again, there's nothing wrong with what SGC is doing. They, generally speaking, for the most part, have actually made good on a lot of it, but their writing and their verbiage allows them not to necessarily do that. And Beckett, in the same way, also has a little bit of an out on that because they are rendering what they would dub an opinion, which is exactly what is supposed to be in the first place as far as the third-party grading is. The authentication piece, of course, and alterations is a big and important part of this. So really what it comes down to is, has anything happened that would have messed up with this card that would have resulted in it getting one initial evaluation where it was authentic and it was fine, and then after the fact something's been altered? It's just kind of, like I said, an open-ended story, just an interesting thing that has come across as a result of where these marketplaces are starting to have to scratch and claw. Because I'd be curious if Alt would have even bothered to do this if the market was still going super hot. And it's one of those things where I kind of feel like they wouldn't. And I can't blame them necessarily for trying to get Beckett on the hook for it, but I feel like Beckett at least has a couple of questions they can ask in counter based on Alt's already questionable track record. And it kind of brings Alt in a situation where they can kind of be questioned on some of their own stuff, and they're not necessarily to be taken at face value as far as their opinion in terms of what they actually did. So just a few quick thoughts on that one. We'll definitely talk more about it on the live stream on Saturday. So we'll be doing Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm sure someone who loves Beckett more than anything else in life we'll definitely have a couple of thoughts as far as the Beckett piece of this is concerned. But it is an interesting one. As I said, I'll include a link to the Twitter thread for you from Paul Lesko. Check it out for yourself if you're interested, and you can scan through some of the filing itself. And Paul Lesko does an amazing job of summarizing some of it to make it a lot more digestible for the rest of us. And at the same time, also check out the Wax Museum podcast YouTube channel and this specific video that covers some elements of it and also explains a little bit of the background of Alt, where really we kind of have to take what they say with a grain of salt as far as a lot of things in the hobby, and specifically stuff like this. So that's it for me. More videos coming up on the channel, live streams usually at the end of the week, in this case on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time coming up. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.